anytime the phone rang, we had to pick it up and go, hello, Mercat Tours. And then like my pals would be like, hiya, it's Lorna. It's human. It's what we do. It's making connections. And that's what we do at Mercat. We make meaningful connections. It was like being with a group of friends, not a group of strangers. We had a really successful couple of years growth. We give history a damn good telling. We have, and we always will. What's our point? So what, you know? We had a kind of big workshop. There was flip charts and all sorts and a lot of noise because we're all blethers. My first battlefield tour was another level though, because that's a 6-day experience. So, you know, it's big stuff. I didn't sleep for 6 days, but nerves are good. Nerves are good, keep you on your toes. We're a stranger. We're not their teachers, we're not their parents. We are a stranger. We do a call to arms. We raise them as a battalion, a PALS battalion, to walk them back to the past. And from that point, we're recreating the past.
If you have been enjoying listening to the stories of entrepreneurs across Edinburgh, then why not subscribe? If you're on YouTube, you can hit the red button down below and hit the bell to get notifications. Or if you're listening on Spotify or Apple, then subscribe to the podcast. We hope you enjoy the show.
Kat, thanks for joining us today.
Lovely to be here, thank you.
So tell us a little bit about the business. What is it?
We have two family businesses, Mercat Tours International and Mercat Tours Edinburgh. Mercat Tours International, we operate history tours of the First World War battlefields over in Belgium and France, primarily for schools, kind of second, third year high school students. And we're the largest operator in Scotland for battlefield tours. Mercat Tours Edinburgh, we operate history walks and ghost tours here and around the city of Edinburgh.
Great, and it's been going quite a while, right? It's quite an old business.
Mercat Edinburgh was 1985 and Mercat Tours International 1997.
Great, family business.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. So take us back then. How did you end up in the chaos of a family business?
The chaos of a family. Do you want to go back to the beginning of Mercat?
Or, yeah, well, wherever. Yeah.
Okay. Well, Mercat Tours was born in a classroom. My dad was a history teacher here in Edinburgh at Holyrood High School. And he had a really simple mantra, really. And that was, history's a damn good story. What it needs is a damn good telling. And that's what he did every single day as a teacher. And do you know, is it the History Boys? You know, the Robin Williams film? There's a scene in that film where, as a teacher, he gets all the boys to get up onto their desks to see the world from a different perspective. And he's this inspirational teacher in their life. Yeah, if you've seen it, that's what Dad was like, you know, and he still has people stopping him in the street. Oh, Mr. Brogan, you know. Yeah. So basically, that was him as a teacher, and he decided that he wanted to take that damn good telling, that history, outside the classroom. And so he began Mercat Tours in 1985, 1st of July. And then years later, obviously, he kept teaching somehow. And it was in 1997 where he left teaching, went full-time into Mercat Tours and missed working with kids particularly, and the stories of the First World War. So the tours that he used to take, the school trips he used to take as a teacher, he then turned into Mercat Tours International. So still doing those trips for all the schools, any schools that wanted that support, and keeping that connection with young people.
Wow. So he was a teacher and had a business at the same time. How was that viewed at that point in time?
Pretty wild.
Yeah.
I think really unusual because, I mean, teaching is a full-time job.
Yeah.
And it was, both my mum and dad are teachers. And somehow, as well as having two kids, find the spare time to juggle, first of all, Mercat Tours Edinburgh, which at the time, I mean, initially it was just school holidays for obvious reasons. But it just began to build and build and build. But yeah, it was, I mean, it's not often you hear teachers having a second job, as it were. So yeah, really unusual, then and now.
And was there, sorry, Alex, was there any competition at that point? Any other businesses doing what he then introduced? No,
and that was really where it came from, because when he was teaching, he often took his classes out of the classroom, because Holyrood is just over in Duddingston, So he would take his classes into Edinburgh, into the Royal Mile, the best classroom you could get in Edinburgh World Heritage area, as we are. And he would see visitors just join on the back of his class as he was teaching on their mile. And that's where the idea came from. Because there weren't any tours. There just weren't any guided walks in Edinburgh at the time, which is where Mercat Tours came from. He decided that was a gap in the market, like that's what you could do, and set up Mercat.
Wow. So as a child, do you remember being like drafted in, handing out popcorn or?
I tell you what I remember particularly is that any time the phone rang, we had to pick it up and go, "Hello, Mercat Tours," and then like my pals would be like, "Hiya, it's Lorna." So yeah. When it was at home, it was just run from the house, so that was the 80s and 90s. Yeah, so that's what I remember.
Yeah. So then you're in high school. What was it always like? Expected you would? That's what you do, or what was that? What was the vibe?
No, quite the opposite. I went to uni in Glasgow. Excuse me. I went to uni in Glasgow. I did my own thing and became a EFL teacher, so teaching adults English as a foreign language. I kind of played my own furrow quite straight from school, really. It was never assumed by mum or dad that I would go into Mercat, and I was quite determined not to. And then here I am, managing director.
Wow.
But I went on my own journey and then came into Mercat. Very proud to.
And are your mum and dad involved still?
Dad retired in 2014, which is when I stepped up. And he's footloose and fancy free. Mum we lost in 2007.
I'm sorry.
She was a force of nature for 5-6 years that she was in Mercat in development. So yeah.
So those kind of the early noughties, I guess. So you then ended up in the business. How did you get there? What was the story there?
So as I say, I went to uni through in Glasgow, and at the time I was guiding with Mercat. So I literally did, I think many business owners and family business would say, you start at the bottom. Yeah. So I'd only ever really wanted to be a guide and help with training and support new guides coming in. But then gradually I got more and more involved, and I more interested in the business. And then in 2007, I was interviewed for a role, and which was development manager, and which I was successful in. Very important, no nepotism, nothing was assumed. So I joined in 2007 full time, and then, as I say, stepped up in 2014 as managing director when Dad retired.
And so obviously there's two sides to kind of the business, which is one is the almost being the technician or the operator in the business, and then there's the running the business. So this idea of working in and working on. Are you familiar with that as a kind of a term? I guess if I just kind of point us to the in the business, what are the attributes and skills required of a good person that works for Mercat?
Honest. Just be honest in every way, honest about who they are, what they need, what they can give. Just really honest. Because something we love at Mercat is the diversity of the people we have, right? We've got 17-year-olds and 67-year-olds, right. So literally every generation of a family almost within the team. And, really diverse backgrounds, and just such a wonderful group of people, and they're all they show up and they're totally honestly themselves in their skills and their opinions and in who they are, their strengths, and everything. So just being really honestly you.
But where does a 17-year-old, to use that kind of at the younger end of the spectrum, where do they learn the things that are required, like the storytelling technique and even I guess the history that they then have to sort of weave in? How does that all work? Our
storytellers, our storyteller guides, are not that young.
Sorry. Okay.
for all of our team, we've got a really rigorous and supportive training program. So for the storyteller tour guides, for example, largely they will have a university background. Some are still at university. So in terms of that knowledge, which is I think what you're talking about there, okay, in addition, we also train, and I mean the training is, kind of 2-3 months to make sure they have. The content, so the knowledge, as well as all the guiding craft, we call it. So the presentation skills and so on. So yeah, it's a very supportive training program that we've got.
Yeah. And why is that so important? Like, I agree, I love storytelling. But why does it make the difference?
Quality. It's what we're known for, giving history a damn good telling. And, we are the premium product in Edinburgh. So going back to your question about competitors, in 1985 there weren't, but there are now. And we are one of the most expensive of the walking tour companies in the city. We are 5-star, and therefore we have to be the best we possibly can be. And that's, as I say, born through our training programme and the storytelling craft that we bring, and Scotland's known for, so that's what we do.
Just on that, sorry, to kind of support what you've just said there, I had a quick look at the online reviews before you came on here, and there's over 10,500 reviews across TripAdvisor and Google, at a very high rating as well. So it's not just a high rating, it's like the volume is impressive. So
yeah, I think it's that story.
That's great. Yeah,
that storytelling thing is so undervalued. I think like there is so much skill in it, and it can take years and years to
make it look easy.
Yeah. Well, I was a youth worker for 4 years, and I think I really undervalue the skills I learned in that of being able to communicate with kids and trying to keep them engaged. And it was I didn't realize then probably the skills I was learning to be able to captivate an audience. Don't want to say I can, but do you know what I mean? Like there is so much there, and actually quite a lot of it is difficult to teach even. It takes quite a lot of going out and learning it and being on the job. And but it sounds like you have a really kind of clear training, almost academy in there. Yeah,
it is, absolutely. And it's human. It's what we do. It's making connections. And that's what we do at Mercat. We make meaningful connections. And those connections are between the storyteller and the visitor, between the storyteller, the visitor, and Edinburgh, and our history, and the whole group of visitors in front. I mean, just talking about reviews, there's one just came in yesterday, go and have a look, and it's just made my heart sing because it mentions the storyteller. Fantastic. So we can share that and celebrate that review with them, which is always great. In particular, it says, it was like being with a group of friends, not a group of strangers. And that's because of the connections that we make amongst the visitors themselves for the period of the tours. And that's storytelling. That's making those bonds and connections and memorable experience of the city whilst they're here. So yeah, totally. It's being human.
And how have you then taken those skills of sort of like being in the business to working on the business as you then lead as MD? How do you translate that storytelling into your own leadership?
I suppose I keep it simple. It's just what I've said. It's being human. And so to go back a couple of steps, in 2017, we had a rethink. At that point, we were just shy of 80 in our team, largest we'd been. We had a really successful couple of years' growth. And in our annual team conference, got everybody together and says, right, okay, we give history a damn good telling. We have, and we always will. What's our why? What's our point? So what, if you know Simon Sinek, what's your why? What gets you up in the morning? And as a team of 80, we had a kind of big workshop. There was flip charts and all sorts and a lot of noise because we're all blethers. And it was brilliant. And ultimately it distilled down that what we do, the reason that we do what we do, our why at Mercat is making meaningful connections, which is what I just said there. And for me, that's what it's all about, whether that's me as an individual, me as a managing director, as a line manager, as, whatever capacity I'm working in at that time with Mercat, on Mercat, in Mercat, it's all about making meaningful connections and just keeping it really simple and true to that. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. So what was do you remember your first tour that you led?
I do. Well, the battlefields, so the First World War battlefields, and also the one in Edinburgh. So the one in Edinburgh, it didn't run. It was awful. I was so nervous. I was terrified at the Mercat Cross, about to do my first tour, which was a while ago, and there were no visitors. Bearing in mind, we didn't even have a website at this point. It was a million years ago, and there were no tickets sold. So all my nerves had to then jangle for another 2 days before the next time I was scheduled. And my first year did run, and it was brilliant. And we actually still run that tour, and I've got such an affection for it because it was my first one. My first battlefield tour was another level though, because that's a 6-day experience where you're traveling ferry over to Belgium, and you're with a group of 40 students, and you're dealing with the topic of the First World War. And exactly like here in Edinburgh, it's all about making meaningful connections. It's about the human story of the First World War and its impact on our world today and the lessons. So, it's big stuff, and there is just so much to handle, and remember, and, from a historical point of view, in terms of the content, but equally just the management of the tour.
Yeah.
I didn't sleep for 6 days. I mean, it was, but it was so powerful because it did go well, thankfully. And I say that because the feedback I got. It was, when I got home, I slept happily for about a week. It was great though. But nerves are good. Nerves are good. Keep you on your toes.
And can I go back to the Edinburgh one then, just as an example? So that was your first one. You're still doing that today. How much has it changed, and how much, because when was that, out of interest, that you did your first one?
1998.
98. So we're 25 years on. So how much has it changed in terms of the kind of the core story?
Okay, we've got just under 20 different tours that we operate in Edinburgh on a daily scheduled basis. We run about 8. 2 of them have been running since the 1st of July 1985. Wow. In terms of, history is history. So, the facts don't change. What has changed are roots, emphasis. So, for example, we took quite a revisionist view of all our content about 4 or 5 years ago in order to make all of our tours more inclusive. So it's been done broadly. Everybody is looking again at our, the inconvenient and truths in our past, role of slavery and so on, and just making a more balanced and inclusive experience, so that our visitors standing on a Mercat tour are hearing stories about people that they can connect with, making meaningful connections. So we did that, and we still do. We still are reviewing the content of what we're delivering to make sure that it's more representative. But so we're always reviewing, always revising every year, and new tours come along. And this year we launched a witchcraft tour, Trials and Truth, which is again presenting the truth of what happened during the witch trials in Scotland and beyond. So constantly reviewing. History is history, but always listening to our visitors and how we make it better for them.
And geographically speaking as well, where are all these tours then? Are they literally kind of in the old town, or are we going further afield?
Yeah, beginning at the Mercat Cross, obviously, on the Royal Mile. So the footprint of our tours, literally, physically, are in and around the old town. We have had tours, and we do tours over to the new town. Not quite as popular. They tend to be kind of special interest, Enlightenment, Edinburgh, and so on. So tend to be in the old town.
What kind of transformation do you see in you know, you take kids away. Sorry, we're going all over the place, but this is all great. What transformation do you see in kids over those kind of 6 days? Is there quite as they learn about the history? You know, have you got any stories of kids you've seen change?
Absolutely. The young people we work with tend to be 14, 15 years old, kind of third, fourth year, and they can be studying history, they can be interested in history, or they cannot be at all. They're just going because their pals are. So you've got a really broad kind of group of people standing in front of you. And we take schools from all over Scotland. We take private schools, we take state schools, and obviously they are very different according to where in Scotland they are. So a school from Oban, for example, is going to be different to Clackmannanshire or Fife. And we make sure that the stories are appropriate and as personal as possible to that school or that area that they come from, in order to help them make that meaningful connection. And when we meet, quite deliberately, we're a stranger. We're not their teachers, we're not their parents, we are a stranger. And it's a totally immersive experience. When we first meet them at the school, with the parents, obviously, all the families and so on, ready to go, we do a call to arms. We raise them as a battalion, a PALS battalion, to walk them back to the past, just exactly as the lads would have done back during the First World War. And from that point, we're recreating the past in order to give them that immersive experience. And because you've only got 6 days, and it's 4 years of a war, and we're a stranger, so you gotta move fast. And the stories are incredible of what the young people can do and see and hear, what they connect with. One just this year, in fact, I was out with a group, and very often kids will have relatives, great grandfathers, uncles, etc., who fought, maybe were killed, and we always try and visit if we can. But this one wee girl came, and it was her great uncle, and he'd survived the war. Which is fantastic. So I did a bit of research and found out how and who had saved him, because he'd been injured. And I shared the story with all of them in a particular cemetery in the Ypres salient, which is known as the graveyard of the British Army, because such a high concentration of British soldiers, those soldiers in the British Army fought and died there. And in this cemetery, which has the largest proportion of unknown, unidentified soldiers in any of the salient cemeteries, we sat under a tree, glorious sunshine, and I told them the story of this girl's relative who had been injured, been shot, and he was out in no man's land and couldn't get himself to safety. The only way he was saved was when a medic insisted on running out under shell fire, so at risk himself, in order to drag him back behind the line, which he did. And this medic, captain, treated her relative, and he survived, but only because he had been saved so quickly after having been injured. And that medic was Captain Noel Chavas. And Captain Noel Chavas is the only person to be awarded the Victoria Cross twice in the First World War. And he wasn't a fighter, he was a healer. And which is a remarkable story anyway, Noel Chavas's. And actually he ended up being killed before the end of the war, and his brother as well. But the fact that this young girl, 15-year-old girl, was sitting there with all her pals, and the only reason that she's here is, to hear that story and to have that connection to that story was because of one of the most famous medal winners of the First World War, Noel Chavas. And she was stunned by that. And to be able to share that story and for her to understand it, where we were and how it's now changed her life, because we spoke about it afterwards and, the impact that had on her. And all our friends shared it with her. So, there's just one example. It can and I'll never see her again. You know, she's, you know, we just had that wee connection for, you know, for 6 days. And now she's got that with her for the rest of her life. And that's just one example.
That's great.
Yeah. It's funny to think in, you know, 20 years' time, she might be giving a talk and being like, that was this time I was on a school trip, you know, like, and that genuinely changes the course of people's lives. Yeah.
I was at a conference just a few months ago, in fact, and I was speaking, and I mentioned Mercat Tours International, although it was mainly about Edinburgh. And at the end, somebody came up and said, I was in the trenches with you. You were playing the bagpipes at 6 o'clock in the morning, waking us up. It was a murder, but we went here and can't remember. And I have to say I didn't, because it was about 10 years ago. But she, so it does stay with them. Yeah.
It's interesting how throughout kind of the conversation so far, you have referred back to the making meaningful connections. And that came out, you say, of the exercise with 80 people. So, because listen to it now, it totally makes sense. Of course you make connections. But before you came up with those 3 words, you didn't have it. Does that make sense? So how did you how quickly, or what was the process like to kind of get to those words that's your why?
I'd go back to Simon Sinek. So his principle is that you've got your what, your how, your why. You know, what do you do? Fairly straightforward. How do you do it? Again, usually pretty straightforward. Your why is the toughest for any organisation to identify. So I knew I wanted to do that logic, that thinking with the team, and we've just got a brilliant team. You know, to be perfectly honest, and I trust them. And so put it out to them. And as I say, we workshopped it. And distilled down all the noise and all the words and all the everything. And it kind of became really obvious. The more that we put the flip charts together and stuff, and said, we make meaningful connections. Yeah,
really nice.
Yeah, you mentioned Simon Sinek quite a lot. You know, is he, what's the story behind that?
I find him really inspiring. I really admire him, his story, personally and professionally, and also I agree with what he says, and I've learned a lot from him over the years. Most interesting, I think, was recently he's talked about the infinite game, the infinite mindset, and which is the idea that so you've got a finite and infinite. Finite mindset or an infinite mindset. Finite is, you know, something like a football game, a football match. There are very clear rules. There are two sides engaging, and the game ends. It starts and ends. Infinite is obviously forever, and you keep going regardless. And he's got all sorts of political and military examples of that. And for me, COVID was the test almost of whether, as a business, you have an infinite mindset. And we can go into that if you want to, but it really struck a chord with me, particularly I say during COVID. So yeah, I like the guy.
Yeah, he's a great storyteller, you know, as well. When you watch him present, you know, he captivates.
Absolutely, he does.
And I guess, you know, storytellers are
the Tet offensive.
Yes. You know,
absolutely.
He's very good at that. So well, tell us about COVID. I mean, it's a trigger word. But for you guys, I can imagine it was a bit chaos.
Yeah. It was, there's a story, as ever. We were actually on holiday as a family. Maybe like the royals, we shouldn't do this ever again, now I think about it. It was a big birthday for me. So my dad, my brother and his fiancée and my partner, we were in Spain, south of Spain, having a grand old time. And on my birthday, I was asked a question by my partner. I said yes. And so, yeah, we were having a great time. And there was this, you know, occasional bubbling on the news about something COVID-y. And it was midway through the holiday when my now brother-in-law got a phone call. He's a doctor. And he was told that on return from his holiday, he was going to be redeployed to a COVID ward. And it was the following day that our team called me to say, we need to have a chat, this is emergency, because we had battlefield tours due to go out with schools. And we stopped those 2 tours that were due to go out that week from travelling. We flew back. We were the last plane out of Seville, out of the south of Spain. I don't know if you remember, they were beginning to close it. So, which we didn't know until we landed in Edinburgh. And the 5 of us, we hugged and didn't see each other for another 3 months. Because we all went home, had to quarantine, which was... and then the following day, called a meeting, and we shut down Mercat, which was, a week before the UK government did. And yeah, I mean, it was terrifying, you know. It was deeply emotional because we are a family business. We've got a team, an international team, who were far from home. And it was hard enough, you know, when you were close to home. So trying to look after the team and, you know, try and anticipate how frightened they were and how we could help them. But how could we help them, you know, given the world was going upside down? So yeah, it was terrifying. It really was. Yeah.
So that happens. You're in those 3 months. You know, those. I look back and I'm like, who knows? Like this business grew out. Like we started March 2020. Like that, my last business, an events company. You know, it went to zero overnight. Couldn't do anything. So the position I was in was, well, got to start something else. So this is how this all came about. But you know, those 3 months happen. You kind of start to think, oh, maybe we're coming out of it, and you get back into it, coming out. What kind of action plan did you guys have in place as you kind of, you know, traversed the years of chaos? Yeah,
and it was years. Going back to being honest, what I said earlier, just being really honest with the team, and looking after them as far as we could. So we had buddy groups, we had, you know, drop-in Zooms, you know, we had quizzes, you know, we just did so much to try and keep everybody connected and supported within the rules, obviously. So, and just being really honest with the team about what we could do, what we were doing, and being honest with our visitors. And we were slow, deliberately. I was, maybe being a family business, I wasn't racing, I wasn't fighting to open. I was on the board of ASVA at the time, the Association of Scottish Visitor Attractions. So I was on a strategic level doing quite a lot of work and lobbying and information gathering with the Scottish Government and Visit Scotland, for example. So I was probably more informed than some, but I was deliberately cautious, you know. At the time, our campaign still is, be safe and feel safe. Be safe and feel safe. So for our team, we weren't going to open until they could be safe and feel safe. And for our visitors, be safe and feel safe. And the bottom line is there was nothing, there was so much out of our control. And with our leadership team, my view, I kept saying, let's control the controllable. Because if we can do that right and look ourselves in the eye, then we'll be doing, and we had to go so deep. You'll know yourself, there was nothing left. There was no money, there was no business, there was no nothing. So we had to go so deep to our heart to make decisions. And they just had to be honest. If that answers your question.
Yeah.
So yeah, and as I say, and we were quite slow in coming out the other side, deliberately wanted to get it right.
And where are you now in terms of, you know, springing back to pre-COVID levels? Beyond that, what's the recovery been like?
We ain't going back. We took the opportunity of COVID to remodel the business. So I think it's fair to say before COVID, we were growing. We got up to just over 80 in our team. At the worst point of COVID, we were down to 19. Really? Yep. And one of the most heartbreaking was realising we had to go through the redundancy process, which, I mean, I delayed it as long as we possibly could. But, yeah, so what COVID did was it gave us some opportunities. I'm not quite at the point of shaking hands saying thanks, COVID, but it did. You know, there were strategic plans that I had for the business, which was going to take, you know, 4 or 5 years. And we kind of did them in weeks because it was like, right, let's just do it, you know. as Winston Churchill says, why waste a good crisis? Because we could. And we didn't know if there was going to be a business tomorrow, so let's just make those changes. So, for example, we took our groups permanently. We cut capacity by 40%. So our groups used to be 30, they're now 18. We have, on all our tours now, headsets and microphones for our team, which is about quality control, about an immersive experience. You know yourselves, the mile gets really busy, gets it just all disappears because our visitors have our headsets and our team are carrying their microphones. It's less intrusive for residents and so on. So
and you didn't have that before, right? Okay, okay.
So we invested in it because it was actually about social distancing.
Yeah.
You could stand in Glasgow and you could hear our guide, with using these. And then we thought, actually, we'll do it for all the tours all the time. Yeah. So we cut our numbers. We introduced the headsets, which just takes us to another level in terms of premium experience. So in answer to your question, we can't compare to pre-COVID because, as I say, we've remodeled the business. What I can say is that we are a happier team, happier visitor. You've just talked about our TripAdvisor reviews, and every metric that you want to care to look at, in profit margin, if you're going to look at that, we are in a healthier position than we were pre-COVID.
Yeah. And it's interesting. There's two questions that hang off that. One, I'll leave that one to the end. You've got
interrupting yourself.
I know I am. That's the way I roll. This idea of darkest times create opportunity. That's COVID's there, but you also kind of said that earlier in relation to a project that you got involved in. Do you want to just expand on that?
Yeah. We have had a long relationship over 10 years with the Grassmarket Community Project, which is literally a neighbour along the road from us in Blair Street in Edinburgh. And they are a social enterprise, a charity, who look after, support a vulnerable community of about just over 500 who have suffered long-term unemployment or addiction recovery, need support. It's an amazing community. They've got a cafe, they've got a restaurant, they've got event space, and they make their own tartan, and so they're commercial, they're great. And we've used them, as I worked with them for over 10 years. And there's always been something in the back of my head that I'd wanted to do something more, something that would involve all of our team and our visitors. I wanted to just give our relationship more depth, more connection. And it was during COVID that the light bulb came on, and that what is now the Our Stories, Your City project. So it was launched last April, and it is quite simple, really. It's almost like a pay it forward model, but it's deeper than that. So where our visitors, they buy a Mercat tour, enjoy a 5-star experience of the city with Edinburgh Castle and National Museum of Scotland and the Palace and so on with Mercat, and they donate the same experience for the Grassmarket Community Project to enjoy. So for those members, they might be in the old town, they might travel in and come to the centre, but they don't know the city, they don't own the city, they don't feel part of the city, they feel quite isolated. And the two main barriers are, one, money. They can't afford to necessarily own their city, see their city in the way that visitors do. So money. And secondly, confidence. So working with them, because they're our pals and they're the experts, so we're kind of working with them. So let's remove both of them. And it's actually our visitors who are paying forward. So they get the benefit of a Mercat tour. They understand the connections we make to the point where they donate, and by the way, the money keeps coming in, for the GCP members to have the same. And yeah, that's the Our Stories project, award-winning Our Stories project.
And just out of interest, what do you say to the guests, the paying guests who are coming in, the visitors? How do you avail them of the opportunity to do the pay it forward thing then?
A variety of touch points. It's on our website, information. We've got videos and all sorts of the GCP members and, testimonials and videos of when they've been on the tours and so on, as inspiration. There's a mechanism where when you're buying your ticket, you can donate. On site when they're physically on the tour, and if they're coming through the underground vaults, for example, we've got QR codes and we've got photographs, and we've got all to inspire them. And across social media, the message is always out there.
Brilliant. And why is that important to you?
It's so Mercat. It's so us, making meaningful connections for a group of people who absolutely deserve to own their city, to feel it and have those stories told to them and shared with them in a respectful manner, where it's dignified, where it's 5-star, which is what they deserve to have, like anybody else, and haven't. I mean, some of the members are, in their 50s and their 60s. And they've never seen the Crown Jewels. They've never seen the Honours of Scotland. They are Honours of Scotland, and because of our visitors paying forward, our storytellers, who love these tours, by the way. I mean, the first one we did, Margaret Ann, the storyteller, I saw her at the end after she'd finished it with the GCP members, and she said, Kat, she's been with us about 8 years. She said, of all the hundreds of thousands of visitors that I've ever had on tour, she said, this was the greatest privilege. I was like, whoa. Wow. So that's what I mean. It works for everybody. It works for our visitors, works for our team, works, it's just that it's about making meaningful connections. Yeah. So that's why it's important. Yeah.
And as you continue to progress the business now, you've had COVID, you come out the other side, you've made lots of improvements. How are you, what does the future look like? And how maybe is technology playing a further role in the development of the business?
We're not getting bigger. As I said, pre-COVID, our team was, up to 80, just over 80 at our largest. We're up to 50 now, and happily so. We're thriving, and that is my focus now, is to thrive. Simon Sinek talks about blowing up your business before somebody else does, and I kind of COVID did that really, and we grabbed it with two hands, as I've said already. So what's next? A thriving team, a happy team who's developing, feel valued, who just love being at Mercat, and happy visitors. Yeah. So thriving, and absolutely. We've got the efficiencies that we've already put in place over COVID actually, and further investment in that area allows the kind of the mundane tasks to be done, allowing the human connection of all the the storytelling and the stuff that we love and are good at doing, we'll continue to do.
I was going to say about your guiding principle, because we ask all of our guests that, but I think you've made the point.
Well, two last questions then. One was around, you mentioned that you're around your luckiest break. Can you maybe just expand on what that is? Do
you know what? Funnily enough, when you asked that before, I was like, I don't think I've ever been lucky. I worked bloody hard, The idea of luck is serendipity, and you just kind of sit back and it happens to you, But this genuine lucky break was in 2002. Yeah. Anybody in Edinburgh probably remembers in December 2002 there was a catastrophic fire in the Cowgate. So it started down in the Cowgate, Labella and Gel, and so there's a huge number of properties, and went right the way up the tenement, back to Chambers Street, up into the South Bridge. It was it raged for about 3 days, didn't it? And at that point, our office and tours were on Nidri Street South. So if you imagine the South Bridge, the fire was on one side of the bridge, and we were literally in the other, and we were not affected. We were very wet because of all the water that to try and control the fire. Yeah. So we were pretty flooded, bizarrely. Yeah. It wasn't fire damage; it was water damage. But nothing really compared to what some suffered. Wow. So that was a lucky break.
Wow. And my last question, the one I was interrupting myself with earlier on, was on your LinkedIn profile, behind your photo, there is a picture. I don't know where it's from, but it has one word on it. What is that word, and why have you got that on your LinkedIn profile?
It's the Mercat Cross.
Is that? Oh.
Rather aptly.
That kind of makes sense. I feel a bit stupid for asking that question.
No, it's okay. I get your point, though. It's not obviously the Mercat Cross. Right. So on the Mercat Cross in Edinburgh, there are a series of shields around the top, representing different parts of the city and organisations of the city. So they've got the coat of arms and so on. And the one that you're talking about is Persevere, which is of Leith. And it's on the Mercat Cross. So it's there because it's the Mercat Cross. And I selected that one and put it up during COVID. For obvious reasons.
Yeah. And sorry, what's the Leith reference to that?
That's, so if you look at the coat of arms for Leith, that's their motto.
All right, wow. Okay.
Persevere.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Kat, thank you so much for coming on and sharing a little bit about the business, your story, and we wish you every luck in the future.
Thank you.
Thanks,
It's been
Kat.
great.
Really good.
Thank you.